You've probably noticed I had recently a little post on my community page about the virtual signaling celebrities and their carbon footprint. But, I probably have talked in the past a bit about, how carbon is the stuff of life. It's fantastic. We're in a carbon famine. We shouldn't really worry about this sort of stuff unless you've really been brainwashed. But let me just share my screen and I'll just show you the post. Only 5 of you liked it, so I was surprised that more people didn't actually go and check out the post. But anyway, and it was basically this one here, which was on Reddit. Worst celebrity private jet CO2 emission offenders for 2022. And I just basically said virtual signaling ass hats. Anyway, so yeah, Taylor Swift's right at the top. There you got all these other people all the way down here that are basically, your Oprahs and your, Travis and your JD and, Steve Spielberg and so on and so on, that basically tell us how bad the rest of us are, while these guys just fly around all over the place. Well, Taylor's well over 8,000 tons. So let's look at the actual averages. So the average carbon footprint per person in the USA is 16 tons, which they consider one of the highest. And globally, the average is about 4 tons. And these people are saying by 2050, we need to reduce it to under 2 tons. Now, if you're basically somewhere in Africa, you're definitely under 2 tons. If you're in the developing countries, you're probably up to about 3 tons. So it's about a third of your living standards wiped, is what they're saying. And if you're basically in somewhere like the US, you're basically asking a reduction of nearly, let's just take a look on the average, or down to the 2. We'll do it on the 2. So, oops. So let's say we had to go, let's say drop under 2, which is absolutely ridiculous. But let's say 2 divided by 16 is down to 12.5% times 1. Oops. Sorry, minus 1, and remove that times 100. Basically, 87.5% reduction in your use of energy within the next, 28 years or whatever. They need their heads examined. I mean, what do you expect to do? You'll be in your home, no lighting, no cooking. So how are you going to eat? Oh yeah, that's right. You'll owe nothing. You won't need a kitchen. You basically just get kibble sent to you, and basically a reduction of 87%. So you'll bathe once a week, maybe just sprinkle a bit of water on you, a bit of soap, and just really quick, about a couple of seconds to use a bit of energy. So this is what they're saying. So you've got these virtual, these people out there, virtual signaling like mad. They fly all over the place. I mean, even the current US citizen, 16 tons on average. Okay, that includes rich, poor, everyone on average. Poor, less than that. So she was using, look, I'll cover all the gamuts so nobody says that I'm sort of just taking it on her, divided by 16. She's using 500, and this is just on air transport. Forget about our homes, forget about everything else. It's just the air transport. she's probably consuming 700 times the average person. 65 just on air travel, nearly 300, probably up to 500. And Travis is about 333 divided by 16, the average American. And that's the regular person. A regular person is 7 tons. So, because the average is 16, but that's for all Americans. Okay. So that's poor, rich, everyone. Obviously, the upper middle class and rich consume far more, as you can see these big numbers, but they constitute about a quarter of the population, all that. But the sort of the middle class, you could say, are probably consuming about 7. Look at the vast difference. It's massive, and we've got these people literally virtual signaling the rest of us and telling us how bad we are. Then they tell us we should be on a kibble culture, which actually means that we actually have to transport all this sort of stuff from overseas, like their avocados on toast or whatever, all that stuff from the other end. So they could sit with their lattes, again, in their little, special clubs and virtual signal, how environmental they are in comparison to the rest of us, plebs. We are, overusing energy. We are destroying the planet. We plebs. Well, they're basically, really enjoying life on the carbon ticket. What a bunch of hypocrites is basically what I'm saying. And this is a video that that used to be on Bart's side, but because of the YouTube sort of issues that Bart's been having, he's moved a lot of his older videos onto Odyssey. And so this is the one that I did the methane busting with him. He doesn't have the study. He used to have it on the other one. So that was a link to a study that I'd actually, well, you'll find it. If you watch this, I basically cover the myth busting about the vegan myth busting, because pretty much the carbon isotopes that are belched out by ruminant animals are the ones that have been declining since the 1970s. It's actually the fossil fuels. It's actually these people, not us meat eaters, that have basically been, and let alone those other isotopes are part of the carbon cycle. They've been part of the carbon cycle for a very long time. It's these people that have been adding. It's the reason why carbon was declining for thousands of years, because even the ruminants, because of the carbon cycle, basically, the trees were getting enough from the animals, and there was a normal cycle, but there was a whole lot of, limestone and all these other things that were actually sucking and absorbing the carbon. So luckily we released it and actually prevented, the death of all life on this planet by going below 150 parts per million. That would have been the long-term situation. We saved the planet. Never forget that. But these people, I don't care about their emissions. What I care and what annoys me basically is their hypocrisy, is their damn hypocrisy. And in a world where we have, some limitations in energy, we don't have enough energy to support, they want to take away the animals that can actually nourish us, that have got far more nutrient density. They want to take that away from us. Look what's happening in the Netherlands and other places. They want to take that away from us and basically put us on kibble, which actually ends up requiring far more energy. Petrochemical inputs, you've got your tractors, you've got all these sort of things. How do you think? All the different phosphorus and all that, all the different inputs. Cows don't need that. You can put them on grass. They can just eat grass and basically poop out and actually rebuild soils. They don't need a lot of inputs. And if you got rid of all the subsidies and you actually put them into the actual animal production that's where you gave support to people who are pastoralists, building up animal stocks and stuff like that. You'd be able to feed a lot of people with high quality animal foods, and you'd have less emissions anyway, which is what they are so concerned about. So it is absolutely BS what we've been shown and told and whatever else. And I think the rest of us are just sick and tired of this virtual signaling that we get. But these are the sort of people that sit around and basically lecture the rest of us. That's really, if you want to go down to from 16 in America, or in Europe, it's about 12 or whatever, but let's say 7 for the average person and about 6 or 5 in some of the other European nations. If you want to go from there down to less than, like 1.5, I mean, you're going to give up a lot of your modern world. You can forget about, these so-called veganerized warriors. Give up your computer because that consumes a lot of energy. Give up your lighting, your computer, and all that sort of stuff. Because basically that's what you'll have to do. You'll have to basically become a peasant, go back to becoming a peasant, and maybe that's what they want us to be, go back to become a peasant. You'll own nothing and all that. We'll own everything, and you'll be happy as a peasant while we rule the castle, which is what they're telling you. So maybe that's what they're really telling you. And the quickest way to basically impoverish a population is deny them their energy, cheap energy, and make everything expensive, and really things fall apart then. Just look at what's happened to Europe. So it is crazy what these politicians need to be kicked out. We need a new carbon deal. We need to pump more out and basically support economic growth and prosperity for all humans on this planet, not just the virtual signaling celebrities, but for everyone. Carbon is the stuff of life. We're all carbon life forms. It's not a pollutant, because that would mean that all life is a pollutant. It's a misanthropist concept to consider carbon a pollutant. Now, producing through coal-fired power stations and all that, yeah, you get particulates, but you can put filters in for that sort of stuff. We did it in many of the Western countries and eliminated that problem of smog and all that sort of stuff. You can do it through regulation and, pass legislation, force it. China could do it. They just decided not to. They don't really care because basically they got their friends. They want to look after them. And because you can't elect anyone that you really want to change things, it doesn't happen unless there's international pressure. And it's not going to happen because nobody cares. Everybody's virtual signaling. They're more concerned about people in America and Europe, whether they can get their latte, their avocado shipped in or actually flown in, and pretty much, flown in, carbon credits, and then basically, put up, some third world country put up a tree that probably won't even survive, because it's being put in an area that it isn't just part of the normal ecosystem and all that. You see them all, they rows and rows and rows. The only areas in the world where you actually see really good forestry, that's where there's a forestry industry. Just look at basically the Dominican Republic from a satellite. They got a forestry industry because they need it for their housing and stuff like that. They actually have got massive forests. The whole country is covered in forests. Then Haiti, which is right next to Dor on the west side, barren. From the border onwards, barren. They've got no interest. They just cut down. There's no industry there. So when there's a forestry industry, it actually protects and builds, forestry stock because it's got value. So people that basically tell you that forestry industry is bad are lunatics. I only have to take a look at every single country where there's a forestry industry. Scandinavian countries, forestry industry, massive forests. Countries that don't have a forestry industry, very little. It's not accidental. Even where I'm in Tasmania, you've got a big environmental movement here. We've got massive forests. About 75% of Tasmania is basically forest and protected. I mean, and we've got a vibrant forest industry, and people see the log trucks going past and they go, "Oh, how awful! They cut more trees." No, how fantastic! They're actually growing more forests because they need it, because it's actually got value. So I mean, okay, you get rid of coal and oil and all that. So what are people going to do? Like they did in Haiti. What did they do? They went and chopped everything down. And when people are desperate, look what's happening in Germany. People are going to the forest and actually chopping down trees. Got it? So when you basically build windmills and solar farms, what you actually end up doing, you make people desperate for energy. Most people are not going to basically accept a lower living standard or to die in the cold of winter in Northern Europe or to starve. They're going to go out and start killing animals in the forest, start cutting down, trees. That's what they're going to do. And so you're going to end up with far greater loss as a consequence. These policies have been absolutely disastrous for, the West. The West is basically dying. It's dying pretty much. Europe is definitely, it's falling apart completely. They've got no European leaders. Most of those bureaucrats in Brussels, all they do is they fly in, fly out, and basically sit around, with their avocados and lattes. That's all they do all day, talking bullshit. They've got no solution. It's going to come from the European people cooperating. We can't leave it to the extremists in Europe, and we can't leave it to the bureaucrats in Europe. The rest of European people need to stand up and start creating localized entities. I was talking to my nephew this morning. I was messaging him, it was late in the evening in Greece, and told him, you guys have got a bit of land. I said, your dad's got to, talk to your dad and try and organise. You're on an island, get some fishing gear. He's going to come back, bring some fishing gear with, my sister works at Bunnings, she's one of the managers there. And, so she can get a discount as an employee of Bunnings. So basically she could provide that sort of stuff to her husband. He could take it back. They got that. I said, some chickens, you can knock off the males as they get older. So that's what they are for. You want the hens to lay eggs. You can produce some eggs of your own. You've got a plot of land anywhere in Europe, backyard, get some hens in, get some chickens in, that sort of stuff, produce some eggs of your own, acquire some food independence. Don't sit there sort of going, oh, and panicking. That's not going to help you. And don't expect the government to help you. Printing money isn't going to save you. Believe me, it's a supply issue. If there's not enough goods, you could have a pile of money. You just can't buy anything because it's not there. You need to basically go out there and resource yourself. You need to basically go out there and do, most people are not focused on that. Get some chooks. Organise a number of things. Have things ready for the winter that's coming in Europe. So you've got food available. Protein powders, multivitamins. I mean, I don't promote supplements normally, but if you're going to be malnourished, you better have all the, your trace minerals and, and your vitamins to be able to at least, it's not the perfect solution, but at least it'll provide you with some robustness and some cofactors for all those enzymes that need those nutrients. These are the sort of things you got to plan for. Some protein powders, I'm not a big supporter of protein powders, that. But at the end of the day, you still need to get some level of protein in, especially if you've got kids that are growing and stuff like that. You need to have something available. It's more for them than basically for you, in a sense. And also some high quality protein, animal foods, eggs, fantastic stuff. If you can get hens that lay quite a few in the backyard, get the kids out there to pick them up or whatever. Guys, you just got to get your act together. the pollies aren't going to do anything for you. They don't care. They got no idea. They're sitting playing, literally playing with their fingers, trying to work out and squabbling because they can't make any decisions. If you expect them to save you, oh God, you're in real trouble. You and your family, your neighbors and friends and other things need to get organized, get yourself prepared, create independent food supplies. Also, try and work out arrangements. Also, consider other options like efficient heating, things of that sort. Maybe, most Northern Europeans produce a hell of a lot of windmills and solar farms. Get a bit of a solar panel out there to be able to, or a battery storage, so at least you've got something when the main system isn't providing enough. It's not perfect, but at least you'll have some energy to be able to cook some food, some energy to be able to have to heat a bit the house, just to keep it even if it's at a low temperature, so you don't freeze to death, you and your family. It's improvising as best as you can. It's not perfect. We're not talking about perfect solutions. We're talking about try and work out. You should have already started, basically. You should have already started. But if you haven't, you can still do small things. And you need to get your act together. If you're in apartment systems, it makes it much, much harder in that regard. You got to look at sort of low cost heating solutions, whatever's around. You may have to heat one part of the house and focus on that and basically sleep out of that. I know it's very uncomfortable, and it's not going to be, what people, you're literally reverting back to a very older time when people used to live in one room and just slept on the floor around each other. But, around a little fireplace. But sometimes that's the only option to survive in difficult times. So you need to consider all those. You need to look at food supply, things that store well. Protein powders do. A lot of canned fish and stuff like that do in that regard. You may basically have to even consider, because if you've got kids and all that, even consider some other options which are probably less palatable, like plants and stuff like that, like rice and stuff like that. It's not something that I promote, obviously, but obviously there's going to be members of your family that still don't eat a carnivore diet, and so that's the other thing. They'll still need something to eat, and it has to be something that's easily available that can be used. Just soak it and prepare it slightly different to basically reduce the anti-nutrients and stuff like that. So at least they're getting something. It's a tough time. It's going to be for a lot of people, and that's the reality. This is going to be an awful week, and next year's even going to be worse than this year. And if the West puts more pressure on Putin on the military front by sending more and more arms to Ukraine, he may go for the nuclear option. Putin. I'm not talking about dropping bombs. He's going to drop bombs. He'd probably drop them on the Ukrainians to basically try to force them into submission. But he could pull the energy from the rest of Europe. That would be dire for the rest of Europe. There's not enough energy around the rest of the world to supply. The US couldn't supply. North Africa, Middle East couldn't supply. There's just too much dependence. And the Northern Europeans have got a lot to answer because they had the option of the East Med supporting Greece and Cyprus together with Israel and Egypt to basically provide energy from the Eastern Mediterranean. But basically they were more concerned of not offending Turkey and basically abandoned those energy reserves and did not develop them. And now they've got this dependency, which actually will end up being like a gun. It's a gun to their head, to the whole of Europe. So it's going to be interesting to see which countries fall first. I suspect Italy is going to be one of the first dominoes to fall. That's going to basically just turn around and do this to the US. So it's going to be interesting to the Anglospheres. And basically, Biden's actually just made a mess, pretty much an absolute mess of the situation. So their arrogance and their hatred for the Ruskies is why we're here in that situation. And it's actually driven out of London, just to let you know, really, let's say the fingers, the London fingers are all over it. It basically was designed in London and basically implemented, supported by Washington and implemented by Zelensky. So that's really what happened, and the British have been training the Ukrainian army now for some time. You may not know about this, but that's what is exactly happening. So, I mean, that's the situation. In reality, this war didn't need to happen. If Zelensky had done as he had actually promised to do when he was elected, to implement the Minsk agreements, and didn't listen to Biden, we probably wouldn't have been in this situation. But that doesn't mean it was a good thing to be dependent for the majority of the energy of Europe to Russia. That's ridiculous, especially when in southern Europe there's massive reserves. And that would actually also have helped those countries bring down their debt levels and actually rebalance the Eurozone and actually improve European stability, economic stability, and provide cheaper energy within the Eurozone, so you didn't have to actually buy as much from outside and have an external dependency, reduce foreign dependency. But no, we've got all these Green New Deal lunatics in Brussels that basically have decided to, no, we're not going to use these. We'll allow others to pollute, like Russia and all that, but we won't pollute ourselves and bring our own resources and actually improve our economy and our competitiveness and everything else. How crazy is that? I mean, you're still using Russian energy. So what's the difference if you're using Greek energy, which would have helped the Greek economy, Cypriot economy, those sort of countries that are close, that are allies to you anyway, and you would have helped them improve their economic state. You would have rebalanced the Eurozone, lowering the debt levels of the whole of Europe and improving the economic outcome. I think that would have been a smart policy. And it would mean that Europe would be less dependent on Russian energy. And so they couldn't be pushed around as much or told what to do. Maybe that's the reason why we're here, because Biden couldn't tell Europe what to do, because Trump couldn't. Think. Yes, you've been had, basically. But yeah, that's the world of geopolitics. That's how it all has played out. And unfortunately, populations all over the world are being used and abused for all sorts of virtual signaling, lunatics, and whatever else. Anyway, I hope this has focused the mind a bit for you people, and realize that next year is going to be far worse than this year everywhere, including here in Australia. I don't think people in Australia realize how, I mean, we're probably luckier than many other countries because we've got a lot of reserves. We produce more food than we consume, more energy than we consume, more material than we use. So we've got quite a lot of advantages. But even us, we're still interlinked into the global supply chain, and we're being affected. So costs have gone up here, but not as dramatic as they've gone up in other places, like in London. There's, costs in some places have gone up by 50% for some people. Like in Greece, I know it's up 50%. It's gone up. Here, this is how crazy. Greece has got massive gas reserves. They could be as rich as Qatar, the Qataris, or the United Arab Emirates, with so much gas that they've got down there. And basically, they can't afford their own energy, the imported energy. Their bills have gone up by 50% of their cost of living. It's crazy. Those politicians are all criminal that are in the Greek parliament. A lot of them, the whole lot of them. There's a couple of politicians in there that basically do want to actually exploit the gas fields, but there's only a very small number of them, you know. So Greek solution, it's called, the party Yikiyisi. That's the only, I don't agree with all his politics, but that's he tends to be a bit towards the Russians and all that. And I don't think that is a good foreign policy for Greece. But on the energy side, he's right. You know, we basically need somebody who's was focused more on Europe, less on Russia, America, anyone else, more on Europe, because that's the entity we're part of, and more on the Greeks. You know, Europe and the Greeks, that's what the Greek government should be focused on, which it's not. Unfortunately, it's more on all these other geopolitical things and, you know, Zelensky killing Russians and how we can sort out the Chinese at some stage and all this sort of stuff. And not that these aren't threats, but the thing is, from a position of strength, you can deal with these, you know, emerging threats. But if you're in a mess, your economy's in a mess, in a tailspin, and you're collapsing, you can't do much. Let's put it that way. Collapsing economy can't support even a military. You know, I mean, it's just or basic law and order. That's just ridiculous. These people have poorly mismanaged things. Basically, we need those people in the US, the warmongering Democrats, that's what they are. They need to be kicked out, basically. And these lunatics, the Brussels sort of consensus, they also need to be kicked out for Europe to be saved and for North America to be saved, and to get some sensible policies on the energy front. Because otherwise, Europe is declining very rapidly, and the West with it. So anyway, so that's not a good future for the people there. I've got relatives in Greece, and I feel for them, and I understand, and I'm concerned quite a bit for the collapse of Europe. But you know, all I'm doing is trying to remind you people that, you know, don't expect a lot from your governments at this stage. You need to focus on your families, friends, and all that. How can you prepare? And then, you know, next elections, you've got the reckoning that you can sort these people out. But at this stage, you need to survive to the next election. And then you need to basically start, you know, creating your own, you know, independent groups. You know, try and actually create independent centrist groups that are sensible, that are basically people orientated, not extreme groups that are basically just want to either send you to one war against the left or one war against the right. We don't want these people. They're lunatics. We want a new centre that's basically practical and wants to get things sorted. You know, like some of the statesmen we had in the past that were practical people. There's still people like that out there. Not everyone went through a university and got brainwashed. There are still practical people that actually worked and actually went into parliament, you know, and went in periodically. We need to get these local people, tradespeople, people, you know, in businesses, people with skills and stuff like that. We need to get these people, that, you know, the normal people, into politics and encourage them and support them and try and get a new class of politicians that are practical, that want to basically improve the lives of people and not interested in virtual signaling and all this sort of nonsense. It's going to start at a local level. You're going to start creating and think locally. Don't think, you know, forget about trying to create big parties. That's not going to happen immediately. What you're going to do is you will start locally in your local council, and you'll get rid of all those virtual signaling, you know, latte ass hats out of there. And you'll put practical people. And out of those practical people will emerge a new political class. It always comes from the bottom, you know, from the local councils. Then from there, they go to the state governments or regional governments, and then they go to the national government. It's always happened. But that's where you need to bring new people, reasonable, centrist people that have got good, traditional, practical ways of doing things. And then they will emerge as a new political class. So it's all up to you guys. It's up to us to basically support those sort of people at a local level, and then they will from there grow into the regional and national leaders over time. So it's an evolutionary approach, what we've done in the past, where there've been, movements like that, practical people that wanted to change things, that saw things that were just going off the rails, and it worked, and it can work again. It has worked in the past. It's not like it can't work, but it's really up to us. You have to be an active, participating citizen. You just can't be a passive and expect the latte crowd to basically save you. They're not going to. At the end of the day, if it doesn't really work out for them, they'll just fly out somewhere else and take their money with them. That's how they operate. So get your head screwed on properly. Work on the immediate stuff. Sort out your family. Sort out your friends, your local neighborhood and stuff like that. Try and actually build up certain fats and reserves to be able to survive, especially through the winter in Europe and North America, where it's going to be rough for a lot of people. And, other parts of the world, there's going to be varied how much people are affected. Some places really badly. And there, you may have to basically get together in some of those poorer countries. There are like large groups of people that can come together and actually, family groups and sort of pull together. That's the moment to pull together to survive. And that's what you have to do. You're going to do what you have to do to survive, because don't expect the latte crowd to save you. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it. See yous.